I'm Freddie Hall, and welcome to Into the Unknown, where the stories are strange and the truth hides in the shadows. Today, we'll be talking about Two-Toed Tom the Demon Gator with Ben Tew, the Esto, Florida County Clerk. This alligator would have said to have been like 18 feet long and really dangerous, and with two toes on one foot. So follow me and let's uncover this together into the unknown. Good morning, this is Freddie Hall and welcome to Into the Unknown. Today we got Ben Tew here, the town clerk of Esto, Florida, and we are going to talk about Two-Toed Tom, the demon gator. Apparently he was a gator that ravaged between the Alabama and Florida line back in the day. So we're going to talk about that and the festival that's attached to it, that Ben here, he helps host and create. So hey, good morning, Ben.
Good morning. How are you?
Doing pretty good. How you doing?
I am excellent. We just finished our 2025 Two-Toed Tom Festival.
Uh-huh.
It's on the second Saturday in September, so that was just recently, and we had a great turnout this year. And so I am so looking forward to continuing to celebrate Tom's legend in this next year and help grow and build awareness of this amazing Florida legend.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna touch on that in just a second. I guess I'm gonna start from like the past a little bit. So, this demon gator, like 15, 14 feet long, eating livestock and people. Like what's the legend behind it from you guys' area?
Well, the story of Tom starts along the Alabama-Florida state line at a small town in Geneva County, Alabama called Florala, that sort of area, which is not too far from Destin, Fort Walton Beach, the Walton County in the Florida Panhandle. It's right there at that state line there. And it's chronicled in the book Stars Fell on Alabama by Carl Carmer. He wrote for the University of Alabama and back in the early 1900s, because Tom's legend begins right at the turn of the century when the 1800s turned into the 1900s. So right around that time period, and people talked about this monstrous, massive gator that was known to be aggressive. It would kill livestock. It would attack people. I mean, and the original story is that this Farmer Pappy, PAPI, was told that Tom had claimed an area of land in this small community and that he should not try to settle this land and build his home there. But Farmer Pappy, he was going to do it anyway. And so him and Tom ran into fights and trouble. Tom ate his livestock. I think the straw that broke the camel's back was when he ate Farmer Pappy's favorite mule. And
Wow.
so the farmer, he paid a Confederate sharpshooter soldier to stake out Tom, and he sat up in a duck blind for a week trying to spot Tom and kill him, but he couldn't. I mean, they said Two-Toed Tom could never be caught. He was this 14, 15, sometimes 18 feet long, they said,
Wow.
and he was just demon possessed. You could tell by his red eyes. And that's where the story begins. And then it gets much more violent and much more interesting from there. They say Tom assaulted women. Now, that's the words they use in those old legends, but I
Right.
mean, that's pretty much what you would expect from a demon possessed gator. I mean,
Wow.
so
Yeah.
he ate livestock. Farmer Pappy, him and his family thought they had him surrounded Tom and located him to this one lake. And so they got 15 syrup buckets full of dynamite and threw it into this lake and blew everything to kingdom come, just blew it all up. Said they were sure they killed the demon gator then. But no longer sooner had the bombs stopped going off than they heard a scream and they turned and ran. And there was Tom waddling away with the remains of Farmer Pappy's young niece lying on
Oh.
the ground. She had come out to see what all the commotion was about and had been caught and had been killed by Tom. And where that's the legend of Tom in Alabama. They say that the people of Alabama got a mounted posse and were running him out of town. And so he moved and waddled and what came to Esto, our small town in Holmes County, about 60 miles away. And there are legends and people who have written accounts who saw him come into town when some of the main U.S. highways in Esto now were just dirt roads back then.
Yeah.
And they say he waddled down Main Street and then turned and went and moved to Lake Sandhammock, which is like a 45-acre lake right outside of Esto. And they say he lived there for many years.
Wow, that
So,
is amazing, man.
yeah.
That kind of remind me of you ever had played this game called Red Dead Redemption? You know about that?
I haven't played that one, but Tom has recently his legend has been revived in a video game. If
Yeah.
you don't know it, right this year there was a game called South of Midnight that celebrated all things
Oh, I've heard about
Southern
that.
Gothic. And it had all sorts of legends, and Tom was one of the boss video game characters in there. And they sort of reimagined him as this giant 20 or 30-foot tall albino decayed zombie gator with just old houses and trees and all sorts of weapons and spears stuck into him. It was a very cool reimagining, and you really got to see the power of sort of a legend like that. I think it was a very cool work.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy how you say albino because there was like this giant kind of demon gator in the game Red Dead Redemption that was albino too. I wonder if they were just taking lore from Tom, you know?
Well, I mean, that's what's so amazing about these sorts of legends of these monstrous gators. There is that sort of undercurrent of, when you're in swampy, murky water and you
Right.
think about those swimming around down underneath and, giant saurian creatures that might harken back to the dinosaurs or something
Right.
like that still existing and living among us today. So that certainly ties into that feeling that you get. And I imagine back in when the early 1900s, when this area was still, Florida Panhandle was still being settled,
Right.
there were places that just had never been really developed or
Hmm.
seen or explored that well. You could certainly have those feelings and that thought of what's out there.
Yeah. And it can live to, I think, 60 years, 60 plus years.
Well, I mean, what I've
If,
heard is that alligators don't die of old age. They don't age the same way that people or other mammals do, since they're reptiles.
right.
So as long as they get enough to eat, they can live to very extended lifespans. I saw a note of one that was 80 years old in a Berlin zoo in a
Wow.
captive. So I mean, Tom, early 1900s, that's not too far away. Tom
I
might still
know.
be living
I was
down
just
there
going
in the
to ask.
Chattahoochee River.
Yeah, I was going to ask, like, do you think he's still hanging around somewhere?
Well, the last reported sighting of Tom's tracks, and this is what makes it so interesting that we can sort of know where he is, because he is the story of how he got his name, Two-Toed Tom, is that early in his life, he got his front left claw stuck in like a bear trap, and it took off everything but his first two toes.
Ooh.
And so that's why he's called Two-Toed Tom. And that's why the people of the times, when they saw him, they knew where he'd been because he left these distinctive
Yeah.
tracks. And his tracks were last seen in the 1970s on a little island down on the Chattahoochee River called Boynton Island. So,
Wow.
I mean, that's not too far away, and
It's
that's not too
not.
long ago in time. So,
Yeah.
Tom or some of his descendants may still be down there on the Chattahoochee River, eating those monstrous river cats, layering up in some of those inlets on the river, eating goats and sheep and deer and whatever animals are out there.
Yeah, that's pretty terrifying to think about because I don't think they stop growing. Like, if they have a very
Yeah.
healthy food supply, they just keep getting bigger and bigger. So,
Yeah, I mean, that is what it's amazing. The number three world record alligator ever caught was on the Chattahoochee River. So, I mean, that's in the Florida Panhandle, down
Florida.
near Bluntstown. I mean, there are monstrous gators out there. Even if they're not legendary and demon possessed, there are still animals out there that are monstrous and awesome in their size and power.
Right. Yeah, man. So, the festival, when did you start the festival? How did all that come together?
Well, the festival began in Esto in the late 80s.
Uh,
The town wanted something that would bring the community together, something to sort of let us be special and interesting. And they had to make a decision whether to have a festival dedicated to garlic or the legend of Two-Toed Tom. And I think they made the more interesting choice because we sort of celebrate in Esto our rascals and scallywags. And that's sort of what we think of Tom as. Because while he may have done some terrible, horrible things over in Alabama, when he got to Esto, he sort of settled down and he became just a bachelor gator living in this big pond near our town. There are stories that kids would see him and they would shoot at him with their shotguns, but the buckshot would bounce off his hide like peas on a tin roof.
Oh wow.
And whenever, so he was known and seen in the area, but the reports are not about people being dying. There are some reports of missing livestock going missing, and they attribute those to Two-Toed Tom. But mostly, he seems to have stayed in the Sandhammock Lake and maybe have looked for some love. At that time in the early 1900s, near Esto, there was this giant lumber mill. The big timber forests and southern pine forests were being logged at that time. And there was a large lumber mill over in a nearby town called Noma. And whenever their steam whistle would go off, they say Tom would bellow and raise ruckus about it because he thought it was a similarly sized female gator, and he was trying to get her attention and woo her. But a few years later, the steam mill closed, and then Tom apparently moved back on to Boynton Island in the Chattahoochee River. And I mean, so Tom is not a monster for Esto. He's just one of our local rascals, as we think of them. And we sort of celebrate that idea that, people can come to Florida, they can start a new life here, they can be settled down and be a new good citizen. And so we embrace that of Tom and the idea that there are still monstrous, powerful creatures out there in the Florida wildlands. Right. Because while so much of our state has been explored and developed, there are still places deep in the Everglades, along our rivers, up here in the Florida Panhandle, where, people aren't neck and neck near each other. And there are places where you can still find legends and stories like Two-Toed Tom.
Right. Yeah, I just interviewed Dave Shealy last week about the skunk ape in the Everglades. It's like how towns and cities encapsulate on these creatures and make them larger than life, man. Like, it's really cool. It just take to a whole different form of media with games and toys and all kind of art and stuff that come from it. I love seeing stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think those legends are what make our small towns individual and unique. Because in Esto, like I say, we celebrate the story of Two-Toed Tom. He is known, but he is not well known like the Bigfoot legends or some of the other monstrous legends.
Right.
He is unique to our area, and he gives us a unique character for our area. And the story of him develops and changes over the years. There's the first original, stories and tales from where he was fighting Farmer Pappy, but later ones where he moved to Esto and settled down and became, this big gator in our local pond that was looking for love at the steam mill. So, I think legends like that change and grow, and that sort of tells us something. Nowadays, yeah, like you say, video games, movies, they recreate and reinterpret legends in new ways that bring them to new generations. And I think that's wonderful because these are stories that sort of teach us something, teach us about how nature should be respected, how there can be more out there in the wild and in the unexplored than what we know about, how we should be careful that because nature can respond back, even in big ways and small ways.
Absolutely.
I think these legends certainly tell us something.
Yeah, so at the festival, do you guys have a alligator showcase where they try to show the biggest gator now, or
We're trying to build up and celebrate more and more of the legend of Tom. We are a small town, and we sort of create a wonderful small town festival. We have lots of vendors, entertainment. We try to find something unique every year. Last year was we had a lumberjack team come in. This year, we had a live gator show from a reptile zoo down in Tampa that brought their animals and showed them nothing as monstrous and big as Two-Toed Tom, but some, 5 and 6 foot mini gators, we'd say here. know that people could get up close with and touch and, get involved and experience these amazing animals, these animals that harken back to the dinosaurs. We celebrate all the wildlife in Florida. We have displays from the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, all sorts of groups and people.
Okay. So what do you think if the skunk ape came across Tom? How you think how that would go?
I think Tom would be a dangerous foe.
Yeah.
In the water, and especially in the water, I think he would probably be on top.
Oh yeah.
A
Yeah.
20 foot, 16, 18. No one has ever pinned down the size of Two-Toe Tom. Different reports have different numbers, but somewhere between, 14 and 16 feet, a gator like that is just a fearsome foe.
I'm kind of glad he never got caught because I feel like they'll just put his bones in like a museum somewhere and, everybody can come gawk at him. But it's like, I like that he just kind of disappeared.
Yeah, that is what makes Tom special, that he can't be caught. He leaves his tracks, he does what he's going to do, and then he moves on. The sort of Holmes County historian E.W. Carswell said Tom probably got blamed for a lot of the mischief that other gators did.
Right.
But, he is an amazing legend right up there with the levels of the Loch Ness Monster or Bigfoot. And he's just a wonderful sort of special story and myth for our Florida Panhandle.
Yeah, I agree. I'm gonna have to come to the festival because you guys are only like an hour and a half away. I thought you might have been like a little further away, but no, you're pretty close.
Yeah, we are close to Tallahassee, where I think you're based, and we are just a short drive, and we have it in what I think is the most wonderful time of the year, September, where the heat of the summer is going away, and we're getting into the fall, and we just really love, sharing the legend of Tom and celebrating our community with other people and letting them know about this.
All right, that sounds good, man. Well, I think, we pretty much covered the bases because I was just like really kind of obsessed with his lore because he's in so many different forms of media, and you put it right on the nail, honestly.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, the legend of Two-Toe Tom is interesting in that he is out there if you look for him. Louis, oh, who was it that wrote To Kill a Mockingbird? Harper Lee, who wrote the famous
Yeah.
book To Kill a Mockingbird. In her second book after that, Ghost at the Watchman, she mentions Two-Toe Tom. Two of her characters are walking at night down by a river, and one of them turns to the other and says, "Do you think old Tom is out tonight?" And the other replies, "I don't think so," or he might be. So he is out there. When the original Two-Toe Tom Festival started in the 80s, it was written up in journals across and newspapers across the country, like the Washington Post, I believe back then, wrote us up about unique festivals. So the story is growing and it is going to be well known soon, we believe. And people should know about the legend of Two-Toe Tom because
Yeah.
he is an important character in Southern mythology, I think.
Yeah, for sure. But I appreciate you coming on the show, man, and sharing us this knowledge because, I was like, who can I find to talk about this? So I'm glad I caught you. Perfect person, honestly.
Well, thank you so much. I love the legend of Tom and how it is so interesting to small town Florida because you have these places where you got these special, unique elements that set each small town apart. And if you don't communicate with them and dig into your local history, then the town or the city just becomes like everywhere else. The same
Right.
fast food places, the same things. But if you look into the history, you find these nuggets and these myths and local lore that make a place special.
Yeah, I love it, man. But thank you,
All
and thank you for being on the show. Like, I really appreciate it.
right. Glad to talk with you.
All right, man. See you later, Ben.